I stood on the cracked concrete steps of my childhood home, clutching my worn leather suitcase with trembling hands. Behind the peeling blue door, I could hear my father's voice thundering through the house like a violent storm. "You are nothing but a worthless failure, Gwen, a complete disappointment who will never amount to anything in this world." His words pierced through my chest like razor blades. My mother stood frozen in the doorway, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks, but she remained silent as always. "Go live in the streets where you belong," he screamed, his face purple with rage. The door slammed shut with such force that the old house seemed to shake. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces as I realized my own family had abandoned me. What they didn't know was that I secretly owned a software company worth $3 million annually. I managed a small smile through my tears, knowing this moment would change absolutely everything. 3 weeks later, everything exploded in ways none of us could have imagined. Walking away from that house 5 years ago was the most terrifying and liberating moment of my entire existence. As I dragged my suitcase down Maple Street, I made a promise to myself that would define everything that followed. I would prove them wrong, but I would do it completely on my own terms without their knowledge or approval. The journey to success was anything but glamorous. After dropping out of Stanford University during my junior year, my parents called me the stupidest person they had ever encountered. They couldn't understand why I would abandon my computer science degree to chase what they considered impossible dreams. My father worked construction his whole life, building other people's houses while never owning one himself. My mother cleaned offices at night, scrubbing floors while dreaming of a better life for her children. To them, education represented the only escape from their struggles, and my decision to leave college felt like a personal betrayal. I moved into a cramped studio apartment in downtown Sacramento, barely 400 square feet, with paper-thin walls and a leaky faucet that drove me insane during those first sleepless months. My daily meals consisted of instant ramen noodles and whatever free samples I could gather from the grocery store. Some nights, I survived on nothing but crackers and tap water because my budget couldn't stretch any further. But every morning I sat at my secondhand desk with my ancient laptop coding for 18 hours straight. My fingers moved across the keyboard like a pianist performing a complex symphony, creating lines of code that would eventually revolutionize cybersecurity for major corporations across America. I was building something called ShieldTech, a software company specializing in encryption technology that could protect sensitive data from increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks. The breakthrough came during my third year of struggle when I developed a revolutionary encryption algorithm that could adapt and evolve in real time. Unlike traditional security software that used static protection methods, my system learned from each attempted breach and strengthened itself automatically. It was like creating a digital immune system that grew stronger with every challenge. BioCore Industries, a pharmaceutical giant based in San Francisco, became my first major client after their previous security system failed catastrophically. Hackers had stolen research data worth millions of dollars, and they desperately needed something unbreakable. My software not only protected their systems, but actually trapped the hackers and provided evidence that led to multiple arrests. That single contract was worth $1.2 million, and it opened doors I never imagined possible. Today, ShieldTech employs 47 talented individuals working from our modern office complex in Sacramento. Our annual revenue has reached $3.2 million with clients ranging from hospitals and banks to government agencies and tech startups. Major corporations now compete for our services, offering contracts that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. Despite this incredible success, I still live in the same modest apartment, drive my reliable Honda Civic with its dented bumper and fading paint, and shop for groceries with coupons clipped from Sunday newspapers. My assistant Jessica constantly begs me to upgrade my lifestyle, suggesting luxury condos and expensive cars that would reflect my actual financial status. but something inside me resists those changes, perhaps because I'm still seeking approval from the two people who matter most. Every major milestone in my business journey has been celebrated alone. When we signed our first $1 million contract, I sat in my apartment eating Chinese takeout and wondering if my parents would finally be proud if they knew. When Forbes magazine featured Shield Tech in their annual tech company spotlight, I cut out the article and almost mailed it to them before changing my mind. When the mayor of Sacramento presented me with a small business achievement award, I stood on that stage scanning the audience, hoping somehow they might have heard about the ceremony. The internal conflict tears at me constantly. Part of me wants to march up to their door and prove I'm not the failure they believe I am. Another part of me fears that even $3 million in annual revenue wouldn't be enough to earn their respect. Maybe they would find new reasons to criticize my choices or question why I kept my success hidden for so long. But as I sat in my office last Tuesday morning reviewing quarterly profit reports that exceeded all our projections, everything changed in an instant. My phone buzzed with a text message from Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who had watched me grow up. "Gwen, honey, I think you should know something about your family's situation. Can you call me when you get a chance?" My hand shook as I dialed her number, and what she told me made my blood run cold. My parents were facing foreclosure on their house. Bank notices were scattered across their front porch like autumn leaves, revealing $60,000 in unpaid mortgage payments and medical bills from my mother's recent cancer treatment. The same house they had thrown me out of was about to be taken away from them, and they had nowhere else to go. The revelation about my parents' financial situation consumed my thoughts for the next 48 hours. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat without feeling sick to my stomach. Using my company's legal resources, I quietly investigated their circumstances through public records and discovered a heartbreaking story that explained everything. 8 months ago, Davidson Construction Company, where my father had worked for 16 years, went out of business due to the economic downturn affecting the housing market. At 54 years old, my father found himself competing with men half his age for jobs that paid a fraction of what he used to earn. His calloused hands, weathered face, and gray hair became disadvantages in an industry that preferred younger workers who could work longer hours for less money. Meanwhile, my mother's routine mammogram had revealed suspicious lumps that required immediate surgery and 6 months of chemotherapy treatments. Even with insurance, the medical bills quickly spiraled out of control. Copays, deductibles, experimental treatments, and prescription medications drained their savings account and maxed out every credit card they owned. In desperation, they had borrowed against the equity in their house, the same house where I had learned to ride a bicycle in the driveway, where we had celebrated birthdays and holidays, where my mother had bandaged scraped knees and helped with homework at the kitchen table. That house represented 32 years of memories, and now it was about to belong to strangers. The foreclosure proceedings would begin in exactly 10 days. According to the legal documents, they owed $63,000 in back payments, penalties, and legal fees. Without a miracle, they would lose everything they had worked their entire lives to build. I drove past their house 3 times that week, each visit revealing new signs of their desperation. The front yard, once my mother's pride and joy, was now overgrown with weeds and littered with dead leaves. The white picket fence my father had painted every spring was now chipped and gray. A bright red "For Sale by Owner" sign stood crooked in the brown grass, and several windows were boarded up with plywood sheets. During my third drive-by, I noticed Mrs. Patterson working in her garden next door. She was 82 years old, but still maintained the most beautiful flower beds in the entire neighborhood. I parked across the street and walked over to talk with her, hoping to learn more about my parents' situation without revealing my own success. "Oh, Gwen, sweetheart," she said, wiping dirt from her hands with a faded apron. "I've been so worried about your mother and father. They're barely surviving over there." She glanced toward their house and lowered her voice to a whisper. "I don't think they've had a proper meal in weeks. Your mother has lost so much weight, and your father looks like he's aged 10 years in the past few months." Mrs. Patterson's eyes filled with tears as she continued. Yesterday, I saw your father sitting in the garage, holding an old photograph and crying like his heart was broken. I think it was a picture of you from high school graduation. He's too proud to ask for help from anyone, but I can see the shame eating him alive. The image of my strong, stubborn father reduced to tears over a photograph of me was almost unbearable. Despite everything that had happened between us, despite the cruel words and the slammed door, he was still my father. The man who had taught me to change a tire, who had scared away neighborhood bullies who had worked 16-hour days to provide for our family. I wrestled with the decision for days. Should I approach them directly and reveal my success? Should I help them anonymously through some kind of intermediary? Should I let my pride override my compassion and allow them to face the consequences of rejecting me so harshly? Finally, I decided on a middle path. I would create a business opportunity that could help them without immediately revealing my true identity. Perhaps I could hire my father for some construction work through Shield Tech, or find a way to channel money to them that wouldn't damage their pride or force an uncomfortable confrontation about our past. But as I researched the foreclosure proceedings more thoroughly, I discovered something that shattered my heart completely. My younger brother Danny, who I hadn't spoken to in over 2 years, had been secretly sending our parents $500 every month from his teacher's salary. According to the bank records I could access through my lawyer, Danny had taken out a second mortgage on his own home to provide this assistance. Danny was only 26 years old, married to his college sweetheart Sarah, and they were expecting their first child in 3 months. He taught high school mathematics at Lincoln High School, earning $38,000 annually. $500 represented a significant portion of his income money that should have been saved for his growing family's future. The discovery that my baby brother was sacrificing his own family's financial security to help our parents filled me with a mixture of admiration and horror. Danny had always been the good son, the one who followed the rules and met every expectation our parents had set. But now, he was putting his pregnant wife and unborn child at risk to support parents who had too much pride to ask for help directly. I called Danny's cell phone number, which I had memorized but never used, and waited through 4 rings before hearing his familiar voice. "Hello?" He answered, sounding exhausted and wary. "Danny, it's Gwen." I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds before he responded. "Gwen, how did you get this number? Where have you been for the past 2 years? I know about the money you've been sending to Mom and Dad." I said, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. "I know about the second mortgage on your house, and I know Sarah doesn't know where the money is really going." Another long pause. "How could you possibly know that? Can we meet somewhere private? There are things I need to tell you, and this conversation is too important for a phone call." We agreed to meet at Riverside Park, the same place where we used to play as children, throwing rocks into the Sacramento River and dreaming about our futures. Danny looked older than his 26 years when I saw him walking across the grass toward the picnic table where I waited. His brown hair was starting to thin, his shoulders were permanently hunched from stress, and dark circles under his eyes suggested he wasn't sleeping well. "You look exactly the same," he said, sitting across from me. "Maybe a little thinner, but otherwise like time stopped moving for you." "Danny, I need you to know that I never wanted to lose touch with you. When Mom and Dad threw me out, I thought the whole family was against me. I didn't know how to reach out without causing more problems for everyone." He nodded slowly. "I tried to convince them to call you back that night, but Dad was so angry and Mom was too scared to go against him. I've regretted not doing more ever since." For the next hour, Danny explained the impossible situation he had created for himself. In addition to his teaching job, he worked weekends doing construction with some of Dad's former co-workers, earning extra money that he could send home without raising Sarah's suspicions. He told her the weekend work was for a side business opportunity that might lead to better things in the future. Sarah was 7 months pregnant with their daughter, and the stress of Danny's secretive behavior was affecting their marriage. She suspected he was having an affair because he was always tired, always working, always making excuses for where he had been. She didn't know that every extra dollar he earned was being sent to support parents who were too proud to admit they needed help. The worst part, Danny said, staring at the muddy river water, is that Dad still talks about you like you're the biggest disappointment in family history. He doesn't know I've been supporting them, so he thinks the money comes from some small business investment he made years ago. Mom goes along with the lie because she's afraid of what would happen if he knew the truth. I learned that our father had applied for over 200 jobs in the past 8 months, facing rejection after rejection due to his age and the limited opportunities in the construction industry. Each rejection reinforced his sense of failure and made him more bitter about what he perceived as his children's lack of respect for hard work and traditional values. Our mother had been hiding test results from recent cancer screenings, afraid to burden the family with news that the cancer might be returning. She couldn't afford the follow-up treatments her oncologist recommended, so she simply didn't schedule the appointments. She was literally risking her life rather than add to their financial stress. "Danny, you can't keep sacrificing your family's future for this," I said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "Sarah deserves to know the truth, and your daughter deserves parents who aren't drowning in debt and secrecy." "What choice do I have?" he asked, his voice breaking. "If I stop sending money, they'll lose the house in a matter of days. If I tell Sarah the truth, she'll never trust me again. If I tell Mom and Dad where the money really comes from, Dad's pride will kill him." I was about to reveal my own secret when Sarah's blue Honda pulled into the parking lot. Danny's face went white as his pregnant wife climbed out of the car, her belly prominent under a yellow maternity dress, her expression a mixture of anger and determination. "I followed you," she announced, walking toward our table with surprising speed for someone in her 3rd trimester. "I knew you were lying about these mysterious meetings, and I was right. Who is this woman, Danny? How long has this affair been going on?" "Sarah, wait," Danny stammered, jumping to his feet. "This is my sister Gwen. I told you about her." "Your sister?" Sarah's anger transformed into confusion. "The sister your parents hate, the one who supposedly abandoned the family and never calls—" "I never abandoned anyone," I said, standing to face her. "Your husband has been sacrificing his own family's financial security to help our parents avoid foreclosure. He's been working 2 jobs and sending them hundreds of dollars every month, money that should be going toward your baby's future." Sarah's face cycled through multiple emotions as the truth sank in. Relief that her husband wasn't cheating, anger that he had been lying to her for months, fear about their financial situation, and confusion about why he would risk their family's stability for parents who had disowned his sister. "Is this true?" she asked Danny, her voice barely audible. Before Danny could answer, Sarah doubled over in pain, clutching her stomach and crying out in distress. The stress of discovering the truth, combined with the physical demands of her advanced pregnancy, triggered contractions that were far too early and far too intense. "We need to get her to the hospital immediately," I said, helping Danny support his wife as she struggled to breathe through the pain. "This baby is coming whether we're ready or not." The drive to Sacramento General Hospital felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. Sarah's contractions were coming every 3 minutes, and Danny was barely holding himself together as he navigated traffic while trying to comfort his wife. I sat in the back seat, calling ahead to alert the emergency room staff that we were bringing in a woman experiencing premature labor at 28 weeks. 28 weeks meant this baby would need immediate intensive care to survive. The NICU team was waiting when we arrived, and within minutes, Sarah was wheeled into an operating room for an emergency cesarean section. Danny and I were left standing in a sterile waiting room surrounded by motivational posters and the smell of disinfectant, watching other families deal with their own medical crises. "This is my fault," Danny kept repeating, pacing back and forth across the gray linoleum floor. "The stress of keeping secrets, the financial pressure, all of it. If something happens to Sarah or the baby, I'll never forgive myself." 3 hours later, Dr. Martinez emerged from the operating room with cautiously optimistic news. Sarah had delivered a 2-pound, 4-ounce daughter who was breathing on her own, but would require several months in the neonatal intensive care unit. The baby's lungs were underdeveloped, her immune system was fragile, and she would need constant monitoring and specialized medical equipment to survive. The good news is that babies born at 28 weeks have excellent survival rates with proper care, Dr. Martinez explained. The challenging news is that this level of care is extremely expensive, even with insurance coverage. A hospital social worker named Patricia joined our conversation carrying a clipboard full of financial forms that needed immediate attention. Your insurance will cover about 70% of the NICU costs, but the remaining 30% will likely exceed $50,000 for a typical 3-month stay. We need to discuss payment arrangements before we can continue with the specialized treatments your daughter requires. Danny's face went completely pale as the numbers sank in. He had already borrowed against his house to help our parents. His teacher's salary couldn't support these kinds of medical expenses, and his newborn daughter's life depended on treatments he couldn't afford. The irony was devastating. He had sacrificed his family's financial security to help our parents avoid losing their house, and now his own daughter might not receive the medical care she needed. "I can sign a payment plan," Danny said, his voice shaking. "Whatever it takes, just help my daughter." Mr. Thompson payment plans for this amount typically require substantial collateral or proof of income that can support the monthly obligations, Patricia explained gently. "Without adequate financial backing, we may need to transfer your daughter to a county facility that provides more basic care." The county hospital's NICU was overwhelmed and understaffed with waiting lists for the specialized equipment that premature babies required. A transfer there could mean the difference between optimal care and whatever resources happened to be available. I called our parents while Danny filled out paperwork he couldn't afford to sign. It was the first time I had spoken to either of them since the day they threw me out, and my mother's voice broke when she heard about Sarah's emergency delivery. "We'll be there in 20 minutes. She said, not even asking if I wanted them to come. Those 20 minutes gave me time to watch Danny struggle with forms that asked for employment information, credit history, and financial assets. Every question highlighted how unprepared he was for this crisis. His teaching salary was steady but modest. His credit was stretched thin from the second mortgage, and his savings account contained less than $800. When our parents arrived, the family reunion took place in the NICU waiting room, surrounded by other families dealing with their own premature birth emergencies. My father looked older and thinner than I remembered his construction worker's tan, replaced by the pale complexion of unemployment. My mother had lost at least 30 pounds since I last saw her, and her head was covered with a colorful scarf that couldn't quite hide the effects of chemotherapy. The awkwardness was overwhelming. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, and our last conversation had ended with them calling me a failure and slamming the door in my face. Now we were forced together by circumstances none of us could have anticipated, united by concern for a tiny baby, fighting for her life just a few rooms away. "How is Sarah doing?" my mother asked, addressing Danny, but glancing occasionally in my direction. "She's recovering from the surgery, but the baby needs specialized care that costs more money than I have," Danny admitted, finally telling our parents the truth about his financial situation. "I've been helping you with the house payments by working extra jobs, and now I don't have anything left for my own family." My father's reaction was immediate and devastating. The realization that his youngest son had been secretly supporting them while they criticized his sister for being selfish and irresponsible seemed to break something inside him. He sat down heavily in one of the uncomfortable waiting room chairs and put his head in his hands. "You've been sending us money," my mother whispered. "Danny, we thought that money came from your father's investment account." "There is no investment account," my father said, his voice muffled by his hands. "There hasn't been any extra money for months. I just told you that story because I was too ashamed to admit we needed help." The family's web of secrets and pride was finally unraveling, but at the worst possible moment. Danny needed tens of thousands of dollars for his daughter's medical care. Our parents were days away from losing their house, and I was the only person in the room with the resources to solve everyone's problems. But I was also the person they had rejected and blamed for abandoning family values. Dr. Martinez returned with an update that made everything more urgent. The baby's condition had stabilized, but she needed a specialized breathing apparatus that cost $15,000, plus medications and monitoring equipment that would add another $20,000 to the immediate expenses. The hospital needed authorization and payment arrangements within the next 6 hours, or they would have to transfer her to the county facility. "I'll sign whatever paperwork you need," Danny said, even though we all knew he couldn't afford what he was promising. "Mr. Thompson, I need to be honest with you," Dr. Martinez said gently. "The county hospital is a good facility, but they don't have the same level of NICU resources we have here. Your daughter would receive adequate care, but not optimal care. The difference could affect her long-term development and health outcomes." That's when I realized I couldn't stay silent any longer. My pride, my hurt feelings, my desire to prove myself independently, none of that mattered compared to my niece's life. I had the power to ensure she received the best possible care, and keeping my financial success a secret was no longer an option. "Dr. Martinez, I need to speak with the financial department about authorizing payment for my niece's care," I said, pulling out my company credit card. "Money is not going to be an issue for this baby's treatment." The silence in the waiting room was deafening as my family processed what I had just said. Dr. Martinez looked at the platinum business credit card I handed him, reading the name Shield Tech Industries, embossed in silver letters with my name listed as Chief Executive Officer. "Ma'am, are you certain about this?" he asked. "The total costs could exceed $100,000 if your niece requires the full 3-month NICU stay with specialized equipment and medications." "I'm absolutely certain," I replied, maintaining eye contact with him while feeling my family's shocked stares. "Please authorize whatever treatments and equipment my niece needs. Cost is not a consideration." Danny's mouth was hanging open in disbelief. "Gwen, where did you get a credit card like that? What is Shield Tech Industries?" My father finally looked directly at me for the first time since arriving at the hospital. His expression was a mixture of confusion, skepticism, and something that might have been hope. "Shield Tech Industries is my company," I said, addressing my family while Dr. Martinez processed the payment authorization. "I've been running a cybersecurity software business for the past 5 years. Our annual revenue is $3.2 million, and we employ 47 people." The waiting room might as well have been a vacuum chamber. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody seemed to breathe for what felt like an eternity. "You own a company worth $3 million, my mother whispered, as if saying it too loudly might make it untrue. "I built it from nothing after you threw me out," I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded, despite the emotional tornado spinning inside me. "I lived in a 400-square-foot apartment eating ramen noodles and working 18-hour days to create software that protects major corporations from cyber attacks. BioCore Industries, Sacramento Municipal Hospital, the State Transportation Department, they all use my security systems." My father's face was cycling through emotions I had never seen before. The anger that had defined our relationship for so many years was being replaced by something that looked like shock mixed with devastation. "We threw out a millionaire," he said, speaking to himself more than to anyone else. "We called our daughter a failure and she was building a multi-million-dollar company." Danny was staring at me like I had just revealed I could fly. "Gwen, why didn't you tell us? Why did you keep this secret for 5 years?" "Because I wanted to prove I could succeed without your approval," I said, tears finally starting to flow. "When you called me a worthless failure and told me I'd never amount to anything, I decided I would build something so successful that even you would have to admit you were wrong. But somewhere along the way, proving myself became more important than having a family." My mother reached out tentatively, then pulled her hand back, then reached out again. "I never wanted you to leave that night," she said, her voice breaking. I stood in that doorway watching you walk away, and I wanted to run after you and bring you home, but I was too scared to go against your father's decision." "I know, Mom," I said, taking her hand. "I know you didn't want me to leave." Dr. Martinez returned with the payment authorization paperwork and news that lifted everyone's spirits. "Your niece's treatment has been approved, and she's responding well to the specialized breathing support. You can visit her in the NICU if you'd like." Seeing that tiny baby barely the size of a doll connected to machines that were keeping her alive put everything else into perspective. She had wispy blonde hair like her mother, and when I placed my finger in her palm, she gripped it with surprising strength. "What are you going to name her?" I asked Danny and Sarah, who had been moved to a recovery room. "We were thinking about Lily," Sarah said weakly. "Lily Rose Thompson." "That's perfect," I said. "Lily is going to get the best medical care available, and she's going to grow up knowing her family loves her enough to put aside their pride and take care of each other." But even as we celebrated Lily's stability and my family's gradual reconciliation, the hospital administrator arrived with news that would test our new understanding in ways none of us expected. "Ms. Thompson, there's been an interesting development regarding your company," Administrator Williams said, consulting his tablet computer. "Our IT department has been reviewing cybersecurity proposals for upgrading our entire hospital network, and Shield Tech Industries was selected as our preferred vendor. The contract is worth $800,000 annually for a 5-year term." My family's reaction was immediate and intense. The same hospital where their newest family member was fighting for life had just awarded my company a $4 million contract. The coincidence seemed impossible, but Administrator Williams explained that the selection process had been ongoing for 6 months long before any of us knew about Lily's premature arrival. "Your company's proposal was unanimously chosen by our technical review board," he continued. "The cybersecurity system you designed specifically for medical facilities was exactly what we needed to protect patient data and comply with federal healthcare privacy regulations." My father looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't anger or disappointment or frustration. It was something that might have been pride mixed with regret. "Your daughter just saved our granddaughter's life and simultaneously landed the biggest business contract in this hospital's history," Administrator Williams told my parents. "I thought you should know that Shield Tech Industries has a reputation throughout the region for excellence and integrity." The 24 hours following my revelation were unlike anything our family had ever experienced. While Lily continued to stabilize in the NICU, the 4 adults in our family were forced to confront years of miscommunication, hurt pride, and missed opportunities for connection. My father's transformation was the most dramatic and painful to witness. The man who had built his identity around providing for his family through physical labor was struggling to understand how his daughter had achieved financial success that dwarfed anything he had ever imagined possible. His unemployment had already shaken his sense of self-worth, and learning about my business success seemed to complete the demolition of his pride. "I spent my whole life thinking that success meant working with your hands, building things you could see and touch," he said during one of our long conversations in the hospital cafeteria. "When you dropped out of college to work with computers, I thought you were choosing the easy path, avoiding real work. I was wrong about everything." The depth of his regret was heartbreaking. He admitted that unemployment had made him feel like a failure as a husband and provider, and that anger had given him a target for his frustration. Rejecting my choices and calling me a disappointment had allowed him to feel superior at a time when everything else in his life was falling apart. I threw away my relationship with my daughter because I was too proud to admit I didn't understand her world, he said, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. And while I was calling her a failure, she was building something that could employ half the people in our neighborhood. My mother's revelation was equally powerful but different. She pulled out her phone and showed me photos of newspaper clippings she'd been saving for 3 years. Every article about Shield Tech that had appeared in the Sacramento Business Journal, every mention of my company in tech industry publications, every award or recognition we had received was carefully preserved in a scrapbook she kept hidden in her bedroom closet. "I didn't know Shield Tech was your company until yesterday," she explained. "But I saved every article about local tech businesses because I hoped someday I would read about my daughter's success. I never stopped believing you would prove us wrong even when your father was so angry about your choices." She had attended my high school graduation speech virtually using the school's live streaming service to watch me deliver the valedictorian address about pursuing dreams despite other people's limitations. She had cried with pride that day, but never told my father because it would have started another argument about my unrealistic expectations. Sarah's recovery gave us opportunities for conversations that revealed her impressive business background. Before becoming pregnant with Lily, she had worked as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized advertising agency, developing campaigns for technology companies throughout California. Her insights into business strategy and customer communication were exactly what Shield Tech needed as we expanded our client base. "I've been researching your company since yesterday," she said from her hospital bed laptop computer balanced on her knees. "Your cybersecurity software is revolutionary, but your marketing materials don't effectively communicate the benefits to potential clients. You're underselling your own innovations." Over several hours, Sarah outlined a comprehensive marketing strategy that could potentially double our client acquisition rate within 6 months. Her expertise in communicating complex technical concepts to non-technical decision-makers was precisely what my business had been missing. "Would you consider joining Shield Tech as our marketing director?" I asked. "The position would allow you to work from home with Lily, and the salary would eliminate any financial stress about her medical expenses." Danny's role in our family's healing process was equally important. As a mathematics teacher, he had natural skills for analyzing complex problems and explaining solutions in clear, logical terms. During our family discussions, he helped everyone understand how their individual actions had affected the others, and he proposed practical solutions for rebuilding trust and communication. "We've all been operating on assumptions instead of facts," he said during one of our group conversations. "Dad assumed Gwen was irresponsible because she left college. Gwen assumed the whole family supported Dad's decision to throw her out. Mom assumed she couldn't disagree with Dad without destroying their marriage. I assumed I had to solve everyone's problems secretly instead of bringing us together to address them openly." His teaching experience made him uniquely qualified to facilitate difficult conversations without letting emotions override logic. He created a family communication plan that included regular check-ins, honest discussions about financial concerns, and clear boundaries around pride versus practical problem-solving. The hospital's social worker, Patricia, joined several of our family sessions and helped us understand the psychological dynamics that had created our communication breakdown. She explained how economic stress can trigger protective behaviors that actually damage the relationships we're trying to protect. "Your father's rejection of Gwen's career choices was really a response to his own fear that the world was changing faster than he could adapt," she explained. "Your mother's silence was her way of avoiding conflict that might threaten family stability. Danny's secretive financial support was his attempt to fix problems without causing additional emotional stress." But the most significant breakthrough came when we visited Lily together as a complete family for the first time. Watching that tiny baby fight for every breath surrounded by machines and monitors that were keeping her alive put our past conflicts into perspective. Whatever arguments we had about career choices or life philosophies seemed insignificant compared to the miracle of new life and the responsibility we all shared for protecting it. "This little girl is going to grow up knowing her family learned how to communicate honestly with each other," I said, touching Lily's tiny hand through the isolette opening. "She's going to benefit from all of our strengths instead of suffering from our individual weaknesses." The local newspaper reporter who arrived to interview me about the hospital's cybersecurity contract provided another unexpected moment of family healing. He had researched my background and discovered the scholarship program Shield Tech had been funding anonymously through the Sacramento Community College Foundation. For the past 2 years, your company has been providing full scholarships for adult students who left traditional education to pursue entrepreneurship, he said. 12 families in this immediate neighborhood have benefited from those scholarships, including several people who lost jobs in the construction industry downturn. My father's reaction to learning about the scholarship program was immediate and profound. "You've been helping construction workers go back to school?" he asked, his voice filled with amazement. "People like me who lost their jobs and needed new skills." "People exactly like you, Dad," I said. "People who built their lives around honest work but found themselves competing in a changing economy. The scholarship program helps them develop new skills without abandoning the values that made them good employees in the first place." That evening, sitting in Lily's NICU room as she slept peacefully in her heated isolette, our family began planning a future that included everyone's strengths and acknowledged everyone's contributions. The healing wasn't complete, but the foundation for rebuilding our relationships was firmly established. 3 months later, our family had transformed into something none of us could have imagined during those dark days when pride and miscommunication had driven us apart. Lily Rose Thompson had grown from a 2-pound premature baby fighting for survival into a healthy 8-pound infant ready to go home with her parents. Her NICU graduation party was attended by doctors and nurses who had become like extended family during our long journey together. The family compound we created from my childhood home became a symbol of our new understanding and cooperation. Instead of selling the house to pay off the foreclosure debt, we renovated it completely, adding a modern wing that could accommodate 3 generations living independently but staying connected. My parents occupied the original part of the house, which held all their memories and represented their lifetime of hard work. Danny and Sarah moved into the new addition with baby Lily, giving them privacy and space while keeping them close to built-in babysitting and family support. My father's transformation from unemployed construction worker to respected business consultant exceeded everyone's expectations. Shield Tech's expansion required multiple office renovations and new construction projects, and his expertise in building design and project management proved invaluable. He hired several of his former co-workers, creating jobs for families who had been struggling since the construction industry downturn. His pride was restored not through charity or handouts, but through meaningful work that contributed directly to his daughter's business success. "I'm building something again," he said during our weekly family dinner, gesturing toward the architectural plans spread across the dining room table. "These new office buildings will house technology companies that create jobs for hundreds of people. I may not understand computer programming, but I understand how to build spaces where innovation can thrive." My mother's role as Shield Tech's community outreach coordinator allowed her to channel her natural nurturing abilities into business success. She developed partnerships with local schools, community colleges, and nonprofit organizations, creating internship programs and scholarship opportunities that benefited dozens of families throughout Sacramento. Her cancer treatment was progressing well with the best oncologists in the region, ensuring she received optimal care without any financial concerns. "For the first time in my life, I have a job that feeds my soul instead of just paying the bills," she said, showing me letters from scholarship recipients who had transformed their lives through education and entrepreneurship. "I'm helping other families avoid the kind of communication breakdowns that almost destroyed ours." Sarah's marketing genius elevated Shield Tech's profile throughout the tech industry. Working from her home office while caring for Lily, she developed campaigns that clearly communicated our cybersecurity innovations to potential clients across multiple industries. Her strategies resulted in a 40% increase in new client acquisition and positioned Shield Tech as the premier cybersecurity firm for mid-sized businesses throughout the Western United States. Motherhood actually improved my marketing skills. She laughed during one of our business planning sessions with Lily sleeping peacefully in a carrier attached to her chest. Taking care of a baby requires the same kind of strategic thinking as managing multiple client campaigns. You have to anticipate needs, solve problems creatively, and maintain consistency even when everything seems chaotic. Danny's transition from high school teacher to ShieldTech's educational technology director allowed him to combine his passion for mathematics education with cutting-edge software development. He created cybersecurity training programs for schools and universities, helping educational institutions protect student data while teaching the next generation about digital safety and privacy. "I'm still teaching," he said, demonstrating the interactive learning modules he had developed. "But instead of reaching 30 students at a time, I'm reaching thousands of students across multiple states. And instead of worrying about how to pay bills, I can focus completely on creating the best educational content possible." The family business model we developed became a case study featured in Harvard Business School's entrepreneurship program. The combination of technical innovation, strategic marketing, skilled construction management, community outreach, and educational development created a comprehensive company culture that attracted both clients and talented employees. Our Sunday family dinners became legendary in the neighborhood. The dining room that had once echoed with arguments about career choices and family responsibilities now hosted planning sessions for business expansion, community development projects, and baby care coordination. Lily's high chair sat at the head of the table, surrounded by laptops, financial reports, architectural drawings, and marketing materials. My personal life blossomed alongside our family reconciliation. Mark Rodriguez, the hospital's IT director, who had overseen our cybersecurity contract implementation, became a regular presence at family gatherings. His expertise in medical technology systems complemented ShieldTech's healthcare industry focus, and his gentle personality fit perfectly with our family's new emphasis on honest communication and mutual respect. "I fell in love with your whole family before I fell in love with you," he told me during a quiet moment at Lily's baptism. Watching 4 adults completely rebuild their relationships while launching a baby and growing a business was the most impressive thing I've ever witnessed. The community impact of our family's transformation extended far beyond our personal relationships. ShieldTech's local hiring practices created employment opportunities for 23 families in our immediate neighborhood. The scholarship program expanded to include vocational training for displaced workers, small business development loans for aspiring entrepreneurs, and mentorship programs connecting experienced professionals with young people entering the job market. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who had first alerted me to my parents' financial crisis, became ShieldTech's unofficial grandmother and community ambassador. At 83 years old, she learned to use a computer so she could help coordinate our various community outreach programs. "In all my years of living next door to your family, I never imagined I would see such a beautiful transformation," she said, bouncing Lily on her knee while reviewing scholarship applications. "You've proven that love really can overcome pride when people are willing to put their egos aside and work together." The life lesson that emerged from our journey became the foundation for everything we built together. True success isn't measured by individual achievement, but by the ability to lift others while staying true to yourself. Pride can destroy families, but love, combined with honest communication and mutual respect, can rebuild even the deepest wounds. Sometimes the greatest victory is not proving you were right, but choosing to be the bridge that brings everyone home. As I write this story, Lily is taking her first steps across the living room floor, reaching for her grandfather's outstretched hands, while her grandmother cheers from the couch and her parents document every moment with their cameras. The house that once echoed with angry words about failure and disappointment now rings with laughter planning sessions and the joyful chaos of a family that learned how to turn individual strengths into collective success. The $3 million company that I built to prove my worth became the foundation for something far more valuable, a family business that demonstrates how love, forgiveness, and honest communication can transform lives and communities. We discovered that the greatest achievements come not from what we accomplish alone, but from what we build together, when we have the courage to choose connection over pride. Have you ever had to choose between proving yourself right and rebuilding a relationship with someone you love? I'd love to hear your thoughts about how families can overcome pride and miscommunication to support each other's dreams. Please like this video if our story resonated with you. Subscribe to hear more stories about families finding their way back to each other. Share this with someone who might need encouragement about forgiveness and second chances. And leave a comment telling me about your own experiences with family challenges and reconciliation. Thank you for taking this emotional journey with me, and I hope our story reminds you that it's never too late to choose love over pride connection, over separation and family, over everything else that seems important but ultimately isn't.